Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for registering for today's event and coming to CARE's presentation. We have Jamie and Allison who are presenting for CARE today for our self-care workshop weekend. Yeah, you all can take it away, and thank you for being here. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, hi. I can get started. I'm Allison. My pronouns are she, they. And I am the community support CYP intern for the care office. And I'm here with Jamie if you want to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Allison. Hi, everyone. I'm Jamie. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a prevention education intern at CARE.
So some key takeaways for you for this presentation is to get to know who CARE is and how to get a hold of someone if you or someone else needs assistance. And we also want to help develop some self-care practices and work to understand different practices and their purposes.
Just a reminder, please take care of yourself throughout this presentation. We are going to talk about some heavy things today. So if you notice feeling overwhelmed or you're getting triggered, check in with yourself, practice a grounding exercise, and please feel free to step out at any time if you need it. Also, here's our campus partners, Monarch Services 24-hour bilingual crisis line on the presentation, which is for immediate assistance afterwards. But also Alice and I are here if you also want to talk to us after the presentation.
So in the United States, when we're thinking about campus sexual violence, it can be considered an epidemic across media. So nationally, research has found that 1 in 4 women, 1 in 16 men, and 1 in 3 trans and gender nonconforming students are sexually assaulted while in college. And the vast majority of these folks choose not to report. 80% never report to the police or to Title IX, but that doesn't mean that they don't seek support or disclose to their friends. And one of the reasons for not reporting is that most of the time the perpetrator is known to the survivor. So this could be a friend, a classmate, acquaintance, partner, ex-partner, or family member.
So this context is why CARE exists. CARE is a confidential resource on campus for dating and domestic violence, sexual violence, and stalking. We provide support services both for people who have been directly impacted by these issues and people who might identify as support persons or concerned community members.
And currently, for the health and safety of our staff and community, all advocacy appointments and other meetings are being conducted remotely via Zoom or phone until public health guidance changes. And in the evolving context of COVID-19, we understand that advocacy needs may be impacted by changes in like your academic, housing, or social environment. And care advocates can address any safety or mental health concerns with you in real time.
Sorry, y'all, for all these tech issues. But so how we work, CARE's work aims both prevent sexual violence and harassment from happening, and when it does, to support survivors through intervention and advocacy services. So a little bit about our advocacy services. Advocacy characterizes a range of intervention services that CARE offers. Our advocacy is available to all campus affiliates, including students, staff, and faculty, as well as others who are harmed by violence on our campus. We also help support friends and loved ones of those impacted by violence. We also want to note that the experience doesn't have to have been recent for someone to seek services from CARE. So all of CARE's services are confidential and privileged, and this is protected by law. This basically means that we don't share any information with Title IX, the police, law enforcement, or other campus offices without a survivor's consent. We also are exempt from camera reporting, which is a law that requires reporting of child abuse to the police, so minors can also receive confidential services from us. Also, our services are survivor-centered, which means that we prioritize the rights, needs, and wishes of the survivor. And lastly, our advocates are state certified crisis counselors trained in using trauma-informed practices. Quickly, trauma-informed practices means that our advocates understand the prevalence of trauma in society and the effects trauma has on a person, and how to work with a person in a way that does not bring up again or trigger that trauma. Okay. So at its core, the role of an advocate is to help survivors clearly understand their rights and options and to support them in whatever decisions they make. We can connect survivors to different resources on campus, walk them through the process of reporting, and work to improve their emotional well-being.
So, like Jamie said, one of those options may be deciding to report, whether that's the police, Title IX, or to not report at all. And we know that there are many reasons why survivors choose not to report, barriers such as social shame and stigma, fear of police, fear of not being believed, fearing re-traumatization by the investigative process, or not desiring an outcome that includes punishment. And approximately 80% of the people we work with choose not to report to Title IX or police. And if the survivor does not report to either Title IX or the police, care advocates can help folks through the report. If they do choose, they can help them with the reporting process, the investigation, the hearing process. This is like accompanying them to interviews and hearings, reading and explaining investigative reports, assisting with filing restraining orders, and acting as an advisor in the Title IX process. Our advocates also provide accommodations. So whether folks choose to report or not, we can help with accommodations and supportive measures. Survivors have a legal right to reasonable accommodations under the Violence Against Women Act and the ADA. So this means academics, so missing class for a Title IX hearing, for example, needing to take an exam in another room because their perpetrator might be in their class, or turning in a late assignment. And in the evolving context of COVID, we understand that advocacy needs are impacted by changes in your environments. So we can also still help folks with any situation that they might be in currently. Our advocates also can help with housing. So we would help students with on-campus housing if they don't feel safe in current residence, or we can help someone off campus break leases. We can connect to slug support if financially moving, if moving is financially burdensome. And resources on campus are still available to you, and we understand that it may feel especially challenging to get support while you might be away from UCSC. But your advocate can help you get connected to these resources in addition to anything else that's relevant to you.
Also, our advocates offer ongoing support. That's actually what the majorities of what advocates do, is provide ongoing emotional support and safety planning. Sexual violence can take away a survivor's autonomy, and we aim to help survivors restore a sense of power and safety. We also support people in developing healthy coping skills to foster their long-term healing. So we offer resources and referrals. If a survivor has longer-term therapy needs, we provide referrals to CAPS that can get a student seen immediately. We can also refer to the DRC if accommodation needs are ongoing. Also, again, Slug Support is another resource that can assist if there are emergency financial needs for housing, transportation, or medical care. And also, again, we want to note that CARE can provide services for support persons if you need some help with how to support your friends who disclose to you. It can be a lot to take disclosures, and you don't have to shoulder that burden alone. So before moving on, that was a lot of information about what CARE does in our services. So we wanted just to take a pause to check in to see if there's any questions about our services or CARE in general. Well, if not, we will move on, but we'll have some time at the end if you have questions.
So when we're thinking about practicing self-care, like that's a word I think personally that gets used a lot, and we kind of just want to define like what is self-care, what are practices of self-care, how can it feel like it's motivating for you. So I want everyone to take a moment of reflection and think about the self-care practices that you use currently, and to think about what feels restorative when you're doing those. Like, what aspects of those specific self-care actions feels restorative, and how can you build upon those? So just take a minute to think on that. And then to tie it back to like what CARE does, part of this ongoing support that we were just talking about, our advocates do a lot of coaching around self-care, grounding techniques, and coping skills. And like I said, self-care has become a bit of like a buzzword these days, and we kind of just want to think about like what it means to each of us. All right, Jamie, can you go to the next slide, I think? Yeah. So to us, self-care refers to intentional activities and practices that keep you going, bring you joy, and restore you. Self-care is particularly important for folks with trauma histories who may be experiencing complex psychosomatic impacts. Self-care doesn't have to cost money. It is about bringing mindfulness and intention into your daily life. These activities support your mental, emotional, and physical well-being. We should be practicing many different types of self-care to support our well-being holistically. And self-care can be physical, psychological, emotional, spiritual, personal, or professional. So I don't know if y'all can see on that little picture, probably not, but we have this self-care wheel, which I'm pretty sure is also accessible on our website, and it has some ideas on like how to break into this wheel with different practices. So like a physical form of self-care is like going on a walk or doing yoga or doing something athletic that feels restorative to you. Spiritual is like connecting with whatever spiritual identity you might have, going to church, practicing your religion if that's what feels like restorative for you. Emotional might be, you know, having conversations, writing in a journal about your personal experiences, you know, all those things definitely count as self-care. It doesn't have to be, you know, when we think about it in media, it's like this bubble bath, eating out kind of idea. And I don't think it has to be that every time. If that's not how self-care should feel for you, like if that doesn't feel productive, that doesn't feel good, like it doesn't have to be that. It can be, you know, holding yourself in an intentional space and like moving forward, thinking about what you need. It's not what society thinks self-care is, it's what you think self-care is. So I think we have, we're gonna do a quick activity if we can, in small groups. We're gonna give you all a chance to discuss your experience with your self-care. And in your group, if you want to, please share about what things sustain and restore you and what you might need to give more attention to. So what are some self-care goals that you have when you're reflecting on what your self-care currently is? And what kind of strategies do you think would be helpful to achieve this? So I'm going to put that in the chat because I know that's a lot of information. So just give me 1 second. And then if we could do breakout rooms, that would also be.
She'll lead you to our healing resources page on our CARE website. It has also a lot of different resources. Please look through it if you would like to. And once you get to this page, you'll press this little thing, it'll pop out. And I hope it leads to this. It leads to a PDF. I don't see everyone, so I'm hoping.
So once you get here, so what we'll do, Jamie, if you could scroll a little.
Oh, yeah.
So this is just a little worksheet. So for the next couple pages, take like a couple minutes. And if you feel like this is helpful, like as you see, like rank them. So we have our physical, remember that circle we're looking at, our physical self-care practices that we can do. if you want to rank them for what feels right for you, like eating healthy foods, exercising, good hygiene. We have psychological, like gratitude, working with a therapist, setting boundaries, asking for support. We have emotional, like social time, positive affirmations, comforting activities. And then we have, what's next? Spiritual. So that's participating in community, spending time with nature, meditation, prayer, relational, and academic and professional. So if you want to take a few minutes and just fill in the ones that like feel relevant to you, you don't have to do every single one, like that's asking a lot, but just the ones that you really stand out to you or that feel relevant or things you haven't considered that maybe you want to, and just rank those with the 0 through 5 scale that is at the front of the page. Yeah, so, or 4, sorry, 0 through 4. So take a few minutes and do that. And we'll, yeah, like 4 minutes. We'll do 4 minutes. So 11:40.
But now moving on to community and collective care. Self-care is about the individual caring for their own needs, whereas community care is focused on the collective, taking care of people together for everything from basic physical needs to psychological and even spiritual ones. So consider the organizations, groups, or social circles you are associated with. I'm just going to ask the 2 questions, but how do the lived experiences of those people ask for the consideration of collective care? And what steps can we all take to bring this idea of collective care to life? And we can think of examples within your own lives, or how you envision community care. Again, this can be a reflection. Please feel free to share out loud too, or in the chat. I can't right now see the chat, but please feel free to share in any way that feels best for you.
And then if you need like an example of like what community care might look like, thinking along the lines of restorative justice, if you're part of a community that is a marginalized identity and you've all had that shared experience, how can you work together in that org to lift each other up, take into consideration the experiences you've had? What kind of work specifically around self-care do you think your org might need to implement? What kind of group care do you need to implement to help everyone work on a healing process if they've had significant trauma or significant experiences in their life?
I can share. So I am a member of Hillel, which is the off-campus Jewish org. And this week was Holocaust Remembrance Day, but it's 2 days. So we had a lot of discussions as a community about, trauma and history and what it means to be a community. And then yesterday, which was the sort of end of this 2-day sadness, we came together and instead talked about Jewish life now and joy and the beauty of being part of this community now. And that felt like both healing and just like being together and lifting ourselves back up from where we were.
That's really wonderful. Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate it. And that's like a perfect example of what community care and collective healing looks like. I think that religious orgs, spiritual relations that people have is like a really grounding way to think about community care, because that's just something that unifies people like so closely. So yeah, thank you for sharing.
I also quickly wanted to add on all the coordinators who put this huge event together. Also, that's an example of community care. Again, I don't think people said this enough, but the work that you guys are doing right now, just to uplift the UCSC community is beautiful and is filled with just love. And so We appreciate everything you all do for the community. But if no one else has anything to share right now, I'll go to the next slide. And yeah, so we are now wrapping up our presentation. Some tips for creating self-care goals, again, is to keep them simple and make them achievable, practice self-compassion, try new things, such as the ideas listed in these 2 links. I'll add them in the chat after I finish sharing my screen, and reaching out for additional support. As you enjoy the other presentations today, we hope you all practice some forms of self-care. And of course, please know that CARE is here for you all. Let me stop sharing so I can add these 2 links. But before we end, does anyone have any questions about anything that we went over today? Again, about CARE or anything they would like to share? Presentation. But yeah, please feel free to reach out to CARE if you need any forms of support. We are here for you all.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for coming and speaking. And I hope people watch this video too. So in case they couldn't make it today, but we really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Allison and Jamie.